When people first imagine an incident response team working a crisis, they often picture everyone calmly coordinating through email, chat, and shared dashboards while they fix the problem. That picture breaks down quickly once you remember that many incidents target the very systems we normally use to communicate, and some events can take entire networks offline. A ransomware outbreak, a major identity compromise, or even a regional outage can make everyday communication tools unreliable, untrusted, or simply unavailable. Out-of-band communication is the simple idea of having a separate way to coordinate when the primary channels are down or unsafe. And it matters because coordination is often the difference between a contained incident and a messy, expensive escalation. For brand new learners, the key is to treat communication as part of security architecture, not as an afterthought, because the ability to talk, verify, and decide is a control all by itself. By the end of this lesson, you should feel comfortable describing what out-of-band communication is, why it is essential for incident response, IR, and business continuity and disaster recovery, BCDR, and how an architect plans it so it actually works under pressure. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful starting point is to separate two problems that sound similar but are not the same: availability and trust. Availability is about whether a channel works at all, such as whether email can be sent and received, or whether a messaging app can connect. Trust is about whether you can believe the channel is safe enough to use, meaning the people you are talking to are really who they claim to be and the message has not been altered or intercepted. An attacker might leave systems online but quietly monitor or impersonate accounts, so you can still communicate, but you should not. The reverse can also happen, where trust is fine but connectivity is gone, like a power failure or a network outage. Out-of-band planning is meant to give you options for both cases, so you can maintain communication even when availability fails and maintain confidence even when trust fails. This is why good planning includes more than choosing a backup app. It includes deciding how you will authenticate each other, what information can be shared on which channel, and how you will move from one channel to another without confusion. Because this episode is for ISSAP-minded thinking, it helps to frame out-of-band communications as a design requirement driven by the system's mission and threat environment. Some organizations can tolerate slower decision cycles, while others need minute-by-minute coordination because downtime or safety impacts are severe. Some environments assume sophisticated adversaries who can compromise cloud accounts and corporate mobile devices, while others are mostly concerned with accidents and natural disasters. Your design has to match those realities, which means you begin by defining the scenarios you are planning for and the minimum communications capabilities you must preserve. For example, you may require the ability to contact incident leadership within 10 minutes, the ability to coordinate with a third-party provider, and the ability to notify executives and legal counsel with a reliable chain of custody for decisions. You also need to consider that BCDR events can disrupt physical access and staffing, so the plan must work when people are remote, traveling, or dealing with local emergencies. When you treat these as requirements, it becomes easier to evaluate whether your out-of-band approach is realistic rather than optimistic. A common misconception is that out-of-band simply means using personal phones, but personal devices can create new security problems if you do not plan carefully. Personal messaging apps may leak sensitive information, store it in places you cannot control, or mix work decisions with private accounts. Personal phone numbers can become targets for social engineering, and people might not answer unfamiliar numbers during a crisis. Even when everyone is willing, personal devices may not have the needed contact lists, and the team may waste time searching for who to call. The better mindset is to define out-of-band channels as a managed capability with clear ownership, rather than as improvisation. That might mean having a dedicated, pre-approved set of contact methods, a safe way to distribute and update contact information, and a process for validating identities under stress. It also means deciding which communications belong in a formal record and how you will capture that record if the normal ticketing or collaboration systems are unavailable. Planning does not remove every risk, but it prevents the biggest failure mode, which is discovering during the crisis that your backup plan was never truly usable. In incident response, time is often lost not because people cannot fix things, but because they cannot agree on what is happening and who is empowered to decide. Out-of-band communication supports clarity by ensuring the core decision-makers can reach each other quickly and verify the situation without relying on compromised infrastructure. Think of the incident as a fast-moving story that needs a single shared version of events, even if the details change. If the team cannot communicate, they may take conflicting actions that make containment harder, such as isolating systems that another team is trying to preserve for evidence, or restarting services that should remain offline. An out-of-band channel can serve as the anchor for authoritative direction, such as confirming that a certain system is truly isolated or that a certain account has been disabled. It can also reduce the impact of misinformation, which is common in stressful events, by giving the team a known good way to confirm instructions. The goal is not perfect communication, but reliable enough communication to sustain coordination through the most chaotic phase. BCDR adds a different twist because it is not only about stopping harm, but also about restoring essential operations in a controlled way. When a disaster disrupts the workplace, out-of-band communication may be the only way to coordinate staffing, alternate work locations, and recovery priorities. In some events, you may have partial systems available but insufficient bandwidth, power, or stable connectivity for full collaboration tools. In other events, the organization may rely on external partners, such as facility management, telecommunications providers, or cloud services, and those partners may communicate through their own channels. Out-of-band planning must consider how you will interact across organizational boundaries, including how you will confirm that you are talking to the real partner and not an impersonator. It also must consider the stress of extended operations, where communication needs to remain sustainable for days, not just hours. A well-designed plan includes rotation and escalation, so the channel does not collapse under fatigue, missed calls, or unclear responsibilities. Recovery is a long game, and communication is the thread that keeps the game coherent. Now it helps to think in terms of a communication stack, which is a layered way to design multiple options rather than betting everything on one method. At the top, you may have convenient channels that are normally used, like corporate chat or email, but these can be considered in-band because they depend on the same environment that might be compromised. Below that, you want one or more out-of-band channels that are likely to remain available, such as voice calling, text messaging, or an emergency notification service that is separate from corporate identity and network access. Even lower, you may plan for worst-case conditions, such as complete network loss, by having procedures for meeting at a physical location, using radio services, or relying on third-party call trees. The exact technologies are less important than the design principle. You need diversity of dependency. If all your channels depend on the same identity provider, the same device management system, or the same network, then a single failure can remove all your options at once. Planning means selecting channels with different dependencies so that a single incident does not silence the organization. Identity and authentication are where out-of-band planning becomes more than logistics. If an attacker can impersonate a team member on the out-of-band channel, they can inject false instructions and worsen the incident, or they can trick the team into disclosing sensitive information. For that reason, a strong plan includes a simple, practiced way to verify identities and validate instructions. This could be as straightforward as a pre-shared verification phrase, a code word schedule, or a rule that certain decisions must be confirmed through two independent channels before action is taken. The method does not need to be fancy, but it must be usable when people are stressed and must not rely on the compromised environment. You also need rules about what types of information can be shared on each channel, because voice calls and text messages are convenient, but can be recorded, forwarded, or intercepted depending on the circumstances. A mature plan treats the out-of-band channel as a controlled conduit for coordination and verification, not as an open space for sharing every detail. That discipline protects confidentiality while still enabling fast, confident decisions. Contact management sounds boring until you see how often incidents fail because people cannot reach the right person. The plan should include an up-to-date roster with primary and backup contacts for every critical role, and it should reflect reality, not an ideal org chart. It should specify who is on call, who can authorize major actions, and who must be informed for legal, regulatory, or safety reasons. It should also include external contacts, such as managed service providers, law enforcement liaisons when appropriate, cyber insurance contacts, and key vendors. Because contact lists become sensitive, the plan must include where the list is stored, how it is protected, and how it is accessible when systems are down. If the list is only stored on a corporate shared drive, it is not helpful during a widespread outage. If it is stored on personal devices without control, it can become a privacy and security liability. Good architecture balances accessibility with protection, often by using a controlled distribution process and regular validation, so the list remains accurate without becoming a hidden single point of failure. A subtle but important part of out-of-band planning is defining the decision workflow, not just the communication channel. During incidents, people need to know who initiates the switch to out-of-band, who declares that a channel is untrusted, and who records decisions. If everyone switches channels at different times, the team fragments and loses shared context. A good plan includes triggers, such as signs that corporate identity is compromised or signs of widespread network instability, and it includes a simple rule for how to regroup. It also defines how to handle escalation, so that if the first contact method fails, the team knows exactly which backup to use next. The plan should include a minimal set of information that gets shared immediately, like the incident identifier, the current severity, and the immediate safety actions. That prevents confusion and helps everyone align quickly. The goal is to reduce uncertainty in the first moments, when uncertainty is the biggest enemy. Out-of-band communications also interact with evidence and record-keeping, which matters for both learning and accountability. Incident response decisions often need to be explained later, whether to leadership, auditors, regulators, or in legal settings. If the team coordinates entirely through ad hoc phone calls, you may lose the timeline and rationale that helps prove that actions were reasonable and aligned with policy. At the same time, you do not want to create new sensitive records that are scattered across personal accounts or unprotected devices. Planning should therefore include a method for capturing key decisions and timestamps, even if the main ticketing system is down. One approach is to assign a scribe role who records essential facts in a controlled way, then migrates them into the official record once systems are restored. Another approach is to use a pre-approved emergency record system that is independent of the primary environment. The specific approach is less important than recognizing that communication during incidents is part of governance, not just part of operations, and governance needs a record that can be trusted. It is also important to understand the difference between internal coordination and external messaging, because they have different risks and requirements. Internally, you want speed and accuracy so the team can contain and recover. Externally, you may need careful messaging to customers, partners, regulators, and the public, and that messaging should be consistent and approved. Out-of-band channels can help internal decision-makers coordinate approvals and confirm facts before statements are made. However, using out-of-band channels for external communication can be risky if the channels are informal or hard to control. Planning should therefore define who is allowed to communicate externally, how approvals work when normal workflows are down, and how to prevent premature or contradictory statements. Even if you never face a public incident, you will often need to communicate with a vendor or a service provider during response and recovery, and that is still external communication with identity and trust concerns. Separating these streams reduces confusion and keeps the response focused while still enabling necessary coordination beyond the organization. Resilience is not only technical, it is human, and out-of-band planning needs to account for real human behavior. People forget rarely used procedures, they misplace contact lists, and they hesitate when unsure whether they are allowed to use personal devices. A plan that is too complex will not be followed in a real incident, especially by beginners or by teams under stress. That means the best plan is often the simplest one that meets requirements, with clear triggers and minimal steps. It also means rehearsing the plan in a lightweight way, so people become familiar with how to switch channels and how to verify identities without turning the experience into a high-pressure performance. While this episode is not about running exercises, it is important to recognize that architecture includes operability, and operability includes training and repetition. If your plan depends on perfect memory, it is not a plan, it is a wish. An ISSAP-aligned architect designs for imperfect people in imperfect conditions, because that is the environment where incidents and disasters actually happen. To tie everything together, think of out-of-band communication planning as building a bridge that still stands when the main road collapses. The bridge has to connect the right people, support the right decisions, and remain trustworthy even when attackers or outages target the usual routes. It should be designed with multiple layers so that a single dependency does not remove all options, and it should include a straightforward method for identity verification and information control. It must be supported by realistic contact management, clear triggers for switching channels, and a way to preserve an accurate record of decisions. When you approach it this way, out-of-band communication stops being a side note and becomes a core part of secure system and organizational design. For incident response, it preserves the coordination needed to contain damage quickly, and for BCDR, it preserves the coordination needed to restore mission-essential services in a controlled order. The strongest takeaway is that communication is a security control, and planning it out of band is how you keep that control when everything else is shaking.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.